In 2019, there were worldwide demonstrations regarding climate change strategies. It will soon be too late. Centered around the young, many people have taken action against the immediate dangers facing the global environment today. Around the world, the natural environment is in a serious situation, and trial and error efforts are being implemented in various fields in the search for solutions. How can we pass on to posterity the global natural environment we have inherited? Two geographers have presented paths aimed at developing a sustainable society. One of them is Professor Eric Lambin from Belgium.
So I think we all, our human species originate from a very close connection from nature, so somehow we adapted to be in nature on an everyday basis. So I'm sure it does send some strong signal that we are connected to a whole system much broader than our small existence. We have this innate affinity with a number of natural phenomena.
The other is Professor Jared Diamond from the United States.
We humans are dependent upon the environment. From the environment, we get our water, we get our air, we get our gasoline, we get our gases, our oxygen, our carbon dioxide. We get bad things, we get our diseases, we get our trees, we get our timber for construction. We are dependent upon the environment for all these things. If we mess up the environment, we mess up getting these things.
In recognition of their achievements, the two professors were awarded the 2019 Blue Planet Prize, which is regarded as the Nobel Prize in the field of environmental issues. The prize is awarded every year to major contributors to solving global environmental issues. Each winner receives a trophy and 50 million yen. We will look at how the two 2019 prize winners have dealt with environmental issues and achieved significant results for the future of humankind. Professor Eric Lambin conducts research at a Belgian university. Today, he's analyzing some data on the country of Bhutan.
This is digital data, big revolution in the way we understand the dynamics of landscape change.
Lambin has conducted time series analysis of satellite data gathered over 10 years and developed technology to clarify the changes. With data collected by satellite and a GPS receiver in hand, he personally visits sites to conduct a face-to-face survey of the local people's lives and how they are using their land.
So it was very crucial to get the truth from the ground, to be able to relate what you see from the satellites that are at very, very high altitude to what you see on the ground.
By integrating analysis of the satellite data and the results of his fieldwork surveys, he has clarified how human activities have influenced environmental change.
Now, because we have the GPS associated with all these interviews, we can find these households or these companies on the satellite data. So we can link pixels to people and therefore really understand the interaction between human decision-making and land use and land cover and natural ecosystems.
The people-to-pixels approach, enhanced by Lambin, has spread around the world, and many researchers are employing it today. His efforts have greatly contributed to the global search for ways to realize sustainable land use. Lambin enjoys horse riding in the early evening. Spending time riding his horse in the local countryside is part of his daily routine. He started horse riding when he was very young, and in his boyhood enjoyed looking after horses and playing in the forest. Lambin was born in Brussels in Belgium in 1962. His father was a university professor who specialized in applied economics and marketing, and his mother was a historian. From his childhood, Lambin was immersed in horse riding, reading, and music.
And I had a very happy childhood, very fortunate. We were living next to a very large forest, so I was spending a lot of time out, exploring the landscape, exploring nature.
Taking some time off from high school, he devoted himself to reading and traveling as a backpacker to 15 countries.
When I was a teenager, I was a very bad student, so at that time, no one would have guessed that I would become a scientist,
He majored in geography at university, thinking it would be useful for his passion for travel. The first step he made towards becoming a researcher was observations using satellite images. It was around the time that Earth observation satellites began to be launched, and global environmental studies were progressing dramatically.
It was a new technology, mostly to monitor natural resources, kind of soil and vegetation and rocks and minerals.
His first fieldwork was a study of desertification in Burkina Faso in West Africa.
Burkina Faso has many different ethnic groups, and every ethnic group is using the land in a different way. So I was trying to compare whether I could detect the footprint of these ethnic groups on the satellite images. So I just picked up some satellite data and I went there in Burkina Faso. I bought a motorbike. I had my tent on my bike and I left for 2-3 months, roaming the landscape there, and I was moving from one village to another.
In addition to gathering materials obtained from satellite data, Lambin visited the area himself to conduct a survey.
Merging this kind of data on the human dimension that you can only collect by talking to people with the satellite data was a great way to better understand the human-environment interactions in these places.
Ever since then, Lambin has always set foot in the survey area and continued conducting analysis by checking the information from his legwork with the satellite data. In Thailand, he studied the relationship between land development and infectious diseases. He discovered that deforestation forces a change in the habitat for mosquitoes and eventually increases the infectious diseases they carry. In Kenya, he carried out a survey on grazing land. Changes in grassland and forest landscapes affect climate change, and Lambin verified they were the result of the mechanization of agriculture.
He's a very dedicated person, so always being able to jump in the research situation or the conversation or the kind of problem that you have, so you can come to him and you have discussion about the issue that you have, and he will directly identify something to help you or to unlock the problem.
The Walloon region, the southern portion of Belgium. Professor Lambin lives here with his wife, Regine. They've been married for 30 years. Their shared hobby is horse riding.
The joke between my wife and I is that she fell in love with my horse before falling in love with me, because we're both horse riders, and when she learned I had a very beautiful Portuguese horse at home, she wanted to see the horse, and she really liked the horse, and that's how we connected, thanks to horses.
What kind of husband is he? Actually, I think he has the secret of his professional success is in horse riding. Because, well, he's very much an outside man. He loves to work in the garden, etc., take care of the horses, but having his brain constantly in activity. That's my interpretation,
Lambin next focused on changes in forest resources in Vietnam. The data seemed to show that in Vietnam, deforestation had decreased and reforestation advanced, and transition towards a sustainable society had started. Using satellite data, Lambin analyzed the forest resources over a wider area of Southeast Asia, including Vietnam. He learned that although the Vietnam forest was certainly recovering, in surrounding countries, deforestation was progressing and forest resources were decreasing. In other words, Vietnam at that time was trying to protect its own environment by importing wood from trees felled in the neighboring countries.
In my research, we've always done some comparative analysis. We've worked across the tropics, in all continents, wherever there was some interesting land use change process. So my research is not associated to just one specific country, that help us to identify some generic process associated with the land use change.
Environmental conservation efforts have been implemented by administrative units such as national governments and municipalities. However, Professor Lambin indicated that a global viewpoint is essential to tackle environmental issues, including deforestation. And he provided scientific grounds for systems used in resource management, such as forest certification and green procurement.
Land use is a very complex system. You have the whole natural ecosystem that interface with the social systems. So there's a great complexity and a great spatial heterogeneity that I've always been quite fascinated to study.
In 2009, Lambin published a book titled An Ecology of Happiness. He depicted the relationship between the natural environment and people's happiness. The book stresses the importance of protecting nature.
So I just decided to write a book and just explore what is nature doing for us and how preserving nature will actually make us happier and in better health, etc.
Today, Lambin is upgrading the accuracy of his research even further by sharing information through his worldwide network.
In the countries with foreign partners from research institutions, but also from the administration, public administration, and I think there was quite a bit of transfer of knowledge in order to improve protocols and in order also to try to make them reflect about land use policy, how to change land use policy and how these changes in land use policy can have an effect on ecosystem management in the future.
Professor of Geography Eric Lambin tackles environmental issues beyond boundaries. Today, based on the results of his research, he is proposing concrete policies and trying to expand the range of his activities by involving companies and local governments.
So now I'm mostly interested in the upscaling of solutions for sustainable land use. Most of these solutions already today are being implemented with success by some communities, some countries, some companies. The major challenge now is how to upscale these existing solutions in order to create some system-wide transformation.
(1964). An American scholar headed into the interior of Papua New Guinea. It was Professor Jared Diamond. An expert on physiology and evolutionary biology, he was eager to study the Pacific country's birds. As he associated with local people who adjusted themselves to the local environment and have a fine civilization, he was confronted with a big question.
Stone tools were given up in Europe beginning about 7,000 years ago. But in New Guinea, in modern times, where people were still using stone tools. Why? They're as smart as Japanese and Americans, but that raised the question, why were they still using the stone tools today when Americans and Japanese and Europeans are using metal tools? I didn't know the answer. It's really the biggest question of history.
In order to clarify this question, Diamond started conducting a huge amount of independent research. And in 1997, 33 years after he visited New Guinea for the first time, his book titled Guns, Germs and Steel, The Fates of Human Societies was published. In the book, he explained how the whole concept of civilization greatly differs depending on geographical conditions and the environment.
It's a complicated result of geography. The geography of New Guinea meant that they did not develop agriculture early and develop stone tools.
Playing the piano is one part of the professor's daily routine. Another is taking a walk carrying two types of binoculars. His purpose is birdwatching.
My shortest walk is about 1.5 miles, and my longest walk is about 2.5 miles.
Jared Diamond was born in Boston in 1937. His father was a pediatrician, and his mother was educated to be a professional pianist.
Mum also started me playing the piano. I began to play the piano when I was 6 years old. And my sister, a year and a half younger than I, because she was a younger sister, I was always explaining things to my younger sister. When people asked me, why did you start to write books, explaining things to people? I wrote books explaining things to people because I had spent my life explaining things to my younger sister.
In his boyhood, Diamond was particularly interested in birds. He started birdwatching from the age of 7.
I became interested in birds when I was 7 years old, spontaneously. I looked out the window, I saw some birds, I decided that I wanted to identify them. And so from age 7, I became a bird watcher. My interest was in birds rather than the environment, with a concept of the environment.
He studied physiology both at Harvard College and the University of Cambridge. The focus of his next research project was the birds of Papua New Guinea.
Two reasons, adventure and birds. New Guinea is famous for the most beautiful birds in the world, the birds of paradise. A second reason was that New Guinea was a dangerous, wild place. It was a sense of adventure also that led me to go to New Guinea.
His 1997 book titled Guns, Germs and Steel, The Fates of Human Societies, triggered by his encounter with New Guinea, was awarded a Pulitzer Prize in 1998. Its success encouraged him to write more books. They have all brought a fresh perspective to the whole concept of civilization.
After Guns, Germs and Steel, I got interested in why do some societies collapse? Why has Japan had an advanced society for thousands of years and never had a collapse when there were other places like the advanced Maya civilization of the Yucatan Peninsula, or the civilization, the society of Easter Island in the Pacific? Why do some societies collapse and other societies not collapse? That was my next book.
In the book, he focused on the collapse of the Khmer Empire, which flourished in Southeast Asia from the 9th to the 15th centuries.
What I learned was that a big reason behind collapses of societies in the past was environmental problems. The Khmer Empire had environmental problems with forests and with climate and with water. But today we have problems with the environment, with forests and climate and water. Some societies in the past made mistakes and collapsed as a result.
Diamond also considered Japanese history around the 17th century, during the Edo period. In those days, Japan was in a period of national isolation, and all the timber required had to be supplied from domestic forests. The Tokugawa shogunate, who ruled Japan, produced a forest management manual with detailed figures on how many trees could be cut down in order to maintain the forests.
Japan in the Tokugawa era had problems with its forests, but Japan did not collapse. Japan learned to manage its forests extremely well. What can we learn about Japan managing its forests very well and the Khmer Empire not managing its forests well?
In his book, Diamond stresses that how people associate with the environment is of great importance. The slightest mistake in that association may lead to the collapse of society. At the same time, he expresses a sense of hope for the future, writing, "We have the opportunity to learn from the mistakes of distant peoples and past peoples. My hope is that enough people will choose to profit from that opportunity to make a difference." Furthermore, in The World Until Yesterday, published in 2012, he emphasizes that it's possible to overcome the social problems and crises we are facing today by positively introducing the systems which prove successful in traditional societies or modern societies that differ from country to country. Research on birds, human history, and suggestions on the future. One of the reasons for his diverse interests is his family. Diamond and his wife, Marie Cohen, a clinical psychologist, have twin sons.
And it was in fact the birth of my sons that stimulated me to start writing books. Here are my sons. And I realized my sons, they're going to be 50 years old in the year 2037. What is the world going to be like in the year 2037? The world in 2037, that's going to determine whether my sons have a good life or a bad life. And that's why I began to write about environmental issues. My family is the most important thing in my life. It's as simple as that. Marie and my children, they're the most important thing, and after that come books and music and other things.
That he is a wonderful listener who has developed interests in things that he really didn't know about before he met me, and has taken them on as sincerely and with joy and interest. I think birds have been always a nice part of the background, but I never paid attention to them the way I did after I met him. And he, would point out birds to me in a way that I had never seen them before. So that world came alive, how they compete with each other came alive, why they live at different altitudes or not, came alive. Yeah, so he's very inspiring that way.
Professor Diamond continues his research, his surveys, and his writing. His contribution to inspiring many people beyond countries and generations to consider what kind of civilization should be built in the future has been highly evaluated. Many of Diamond's research results are kept at this museum in Los Angeles.
So Jared is almost like a child in his wonder about things that he's discovering and his enthusiasm. So I have seen him out in the field. When I met him first, we went out on a trip around Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, and he would take us out and just want to listen for bird sounds, and he wanted to make sure all of us were quiet and listening for the sounds that he could recognize. And when he would hear the bird calls, just the expression on his face, he truly finds joy in making those observations and hearing and listening.
Even today, Professor Jared Diamond regularly visits Papua New Guinea. Besides his research on the birds, he's continuing his studies on the relationship between local tribal life and the natural environment.
We have to take good care of the environment. We have to take care of the atmosphere. We have to take care of feeding people around the world. We have to take care of preventing war, preventing a nuclear war. We have to do all those things. And if we do 3 of those things, but we don't do the 4th thing, suppose we take good care of the environment and we solve climate change, but we have a nuclear war, we're finished. That's why I say that the biggest problem of the world is to stop looking for the biggest problem of the world, because there's not one big problem of the world. There are many big problems in the world.
In 2019, 2 researchers were awarded the Blue Planet Prize for their achievements. Professor Eric Lambin has grasped environmental changes over a broad area regardless of national borders. Professor Jared Diamond has garnered time-axis clues to reveal the association between civilization and the natural environment. How to listen to the professor's opinions and fully digest them is a task every one of us should face. This program was made possible by the Asahi Glass Foundation.